It's good to see all your faces. I know at least one person is already in Africa for a trip, which I can't wait to be there. I leave on Saturday. I know David's leaving soon and Brenda's leaving soon and Dean, you're already there. So there you go. Very well. Good evening, good morning. All right, so welcome to the June Mastermind Call for the WildFit coaches. I'm super excited to share our guest with you today. I'm going to do some announcements, and then I'll share our guest with you, but I'm super excited. He's someone I've known for years and has made my life 100 times more efficient, and he has some great tools and tricks to share with us today. So before I do that, though, I'm just going to give you some quick updates and let you know what's going on going forward. So after last month when we met with Eric and talked about the new licensing structure, we took some of the feedback and made a couple of quick changes to the program, and I'd like to share them with you all based on feedback. Number one is nobody's going to get kicked out of the Mastermind Facebook group. The language might have been a little harsh. I'm sorry if that came off wrong. And B, we're not going to do that with anyone that's on this call or any of the coaches. As like any of you guys, which I call you our legacy coaches, our like original coaches, everybody's who's a coach right now. So that's not going to happen. No need to worry about that. And going forward, some of you may have seen this, and this is not relevant to anybody on the call right now, but going forward for new coaches that sign up, we're not going to automatically include the Living Wild Fit membership for life, just because it's such a long time that it could be, as the program goes or whatever, we're not going to include that for new coaches going forward. But for everyone who has become a coach up until now or purchased coaching certification up until the end of May, which is all of you guys, then we are going to include it for life. So I had a couple questions about that, and you guys automatically will have access to the membership for life. We have some cool stuff in the works too for membership that we want to change up and make it better. So I just want to give you guys those two announcements, let you know that there's nothing to worry about in those categories. Also, another quick announcement is Mindvalley is starting another big quest on August 5th. So you'll start to see them have lots of, ads and those kinds of things go around. We're working on the price point right now. I was just watching some notifications and updates about it. So I'll give you guys an update live in the Facebook group as soon as I know what the price and the package will be that they're offering. And they're planning on doing another big one with like 16 or 1700 people, maybe even more this time. Also, the new coaches group started last week. So I actually did our first call with them last week, and they'll be joining the Facebook group at some point in the next, probably in the next 6 weeks. So just watch out for them and welcome them with open arms when they do join us in about 6 weeks. We've got a back to spring program starting Monday, June 24th. Some of you may have seen an email that went out promoting that, but we've got a back to spring program for anyone who's interested in doing that. And the Living Wild Fit webinar is June 19th for anyone doing that. And I think I don't remember, Angie, do we know who the guest speaker is for that? Or is Eric doing it? Oh, we do know. Okay, it's not in my notes here.
It's going to be Ariel.
Oh, gotcha.
And I think she's going to be talking about adrenal fatigue.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. That's one thing WildFit cleaned up for me. That's a good thing. All right, good stuff. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, I see that the Africa connection is not very good. I just read Dean's note there. Yep, I kind of figured that's going to be the case. We're prepping for like no internet connection is what I've told everyone. I will be off the grid for 1 week. You will not be able to get a hold of me. So that's good. I'll tell you that. So for those of you who don't know, some of us are going to be with the Bushmen next week in Africa for a few days with Eric. I think there's about 20 of us going. That's including the film crew and some of the support crew. And we're filming some documentary footage for the WildFit documentary that we're working on. And also we're going to be filming some new marketing videos for you guys as coaches to be able to use, like filmed in the bush with the Hadza. So we're all going to basically do a whole lot of filming and have the experience. I mean, really, that's why we're going, is for the experience. But we will be off the grid for a week. We've been told there'll be no Wi-Fi, and if there is, it's going to be super patchy. So we're going to be out of touch for a week while we go live with the bushman. I was at a friend of mine at Spin yesterday morning. He said to me, "Oh, that's so exciting. When you go, make sure you're not Canadian." And I said, "What do you mean not Canadian?" He goes, "Like in your mindset, you have to just let it all go and don't be North American for 4 days." So I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that, but we'll try. David is like, "Oh no, how do we do that?" So, all right, guys, I am excited to introduce you to our guest speaker today. His name is Kyle McNeil, and I've known him for about 9 years. We've worked together in 2 different businesses at this point on multiple different projects, and he is one of the smartest, wisest, kindest people I know, but also he's incredibly efficient. He's got, and I'll let him introduce his why he believes that being efficient is something that we should all strive for. And so he's got like these productivity tips to make everything in life run better. He's been working with me behind the scenes on projects that I've been working on and WildFit now for a bit over a year. And every time something works and runs better within WildFit, Kyle's had his fingers on it at some point. Like he has made all of us, having him in your presence makes you more efficient. That's how that works. So I'm really excited to welcome him today. I know he's got a great presentation for us. We'll do questions at the end. And I will, at this point, turn the floor over to Kyle.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I really appreciate that. And good morning, everybody, or good evening, or good afternoon, or good early morning wherever you are. I'm super excited to be here. And Andrea, it's been just a joy to work with you. I think one of the things I love about Andrea is, as much as she said those things, and I appreciate them, and I do, I also know that Andrea provides platforms for people to be able to strive and grow. So thank you, Andrea, for doing that in your leadership. Excited to be here with you guys this morning. We're going to be having a good time together. I've got a slide deck prepared, so I'm going to pull that up and we'll get started. And I'll give you some of my background, and we're going to get into this topic about how you can get your time back. So let me just pull this up. Okay, if you guys can see something on your screen that says next level, give me a thumbs up. Okay, sweet. Good stuff. So I say next level because what I want to do this whole conversation is just to keep going next level with wherever you're at right now. Maybe some of these things you're already mastered. Maybe some of them will be new to you. I just think it's an opportunity for us to all just next level that next little bit. So super excited for it. So let's jump in. Today's topic is about getting your time back and making the most of it. So how many of you want to learn some more about how to do that? If you're in, just put it in the chat or throw your hand up. I won't be able to see all of you because there's only so many video cameras. Sweet. Cool. So that's what we will be talking about today. If that doesn't sound like something you're interested in, then maybe, turn a different direction or turn the volume down. But this is what we will be covering today, and I expect it to be really good. Okay, so a little bit about who I am. My name's Kyle McNeil. I live in currently nice summer weather Calgary, Alberta. Often not that way, but we survive and we're stronger for it. Some of my background, I've been a coach. I've also done some speaking on stage, and I've had about a decade now in marketing and sales. And I just love how at the end of the day, it all weaves together. And it helps us to, those things I've enjoyed because it helps me to become better in what I do. And my personal goal is to make a difference in the lives of other people and to make a positive impact. What I do today, I spend a lot of time behind the scenes with Andrea and Angie and Nicole, helping to make things even better with WildFit. Really, really love this program and everything WildFit's up to. I think it's super cool. And I'm excited to be with you guys today as coaches. I've been thinking about the last 24 hours, the impact that you make in people's lives. And it is not insignificant. It is very significant. So I'm excited to be here with you. I value time, which is our topic today, and I also value yours. So let's keep rolling. Some of you may be familiar with Simon Sinek. He says, start with why. So I'm going to start with my why before we get into the what and the hows. I remember somebody saying once, they said that the what informs. So when we talk about what we're doing, it kind of like informs us like mentally, but the why transforms. When we connect with a why in our lives, it actually transforms us. So this was a transformational experience I had. It was not one I planned to. It wasn't like I signed up for an event and I'm like, I'm going to go transform. when I was 17 years old, my dad just out of the blue walked into the room I was in when I was living at my home growing up. Just walked out of the blue, and he walked in and he was like holding his chest, and he was really weak in breath, and he could barely speak. I could barely understand him, but I could tell he was in a lot of discomfort. And I said, Dad, what's wrong? And he says, Kyle, he says, I need to get to the hospital. Can you drive me? I don't feel well. He says, I think I'm having a heart attack. So I'm like, oh, wow, like this is like red alert. And I go and pull the car out of the garage. We lived out in the countryside, and I pull the car out of the garage, and I'm just like if you can be stressed at a 10 out of 10 as a max, I'm pretty sure I hit 20. It was really super stressful. My dad gets in the car, and we're driving to town. I lived in a small town, and we get to the hospital, and that was a whole experience that just completely impacted me. Thankfully, my dad made it through that, and he ended up living about another 10 years before cancer took his life in 2010. And both of those events, and this is the very short version, both of those events taught me a tremendous amount about the importance of life, the importance of health, and the importance of time. And so that's a big driver for me as to what my why is. And I really think that it's so important to be able to make the most of our time. And if we're not at that point, to be able to get our time back. So we're going to be talking about both today. And I encourage you to take notes to the things that stick out to you. I don't ask you to like write down everything I say. There's probably going to be 1 or 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 things that you hear either from me or you just have an idea come to you. Write that down. And I consider that to be a precious little piece of gold nugget just for you. So let's talk about you. This is what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about you. Don't worry, this isn't going to get too like touchy-feely, but we're going to talk about you and your world. And I wanted to do my best in preparation to go into the space of maybe where you're at. So I did a little digging, and I referred to some resources that I think are super credible to give us some insight into maybe some things that are going on in your world. I'm curious to know, of those of you on the line, how many of you have ever seen a game of hockey before? If you have, just put your hand up or put it in the chat. Just put yes. I'm just curious. So the reason I bring this up is because we all do have obstacles, and sometimes this is what our obstacles look like in life. And especially I think in the seasons that most of us or most coaches on the call right now are in a season where there's this one obstacle that gets in the way of you being able to do even more of what you really want to do, maybe even having even more business growth, even more clients, making even more money as a WildFit coach. So I've shared this picture partly because I'm Canadian. I also love hockey, and last night was Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, so I thought it would be appropriate. I could get away with it this one time. So here's what I wanted to focus on in terms of what I see as one of the challenges. This comes from a company in the US. They're called Infusionsoft, and they pulled together a bunch of information about businesses and where they're at in their growth. So they took into account the number of employees that are there, what's their sales per month or per year, and the number of companies in the US. And then they talked about what the biggest hurdle is. So you can see here that there's these 5 different stages. One is the solopreneur. Basically, hey, I'm running this thing by myself. I've got my own business, and I'm doing this myself. Like I am the everything. I am the owner, and I'm the employee. I'm everything. Then you move on to these other stages where you've got a couple employees. Then you get to the next stage where there's like a steady operation, more employees, more money. And then you grow from there to a 7-figure business. So we're talking $1 million and more. And then beyond that, we're getting into stage 5, which is $3 to $10 million. And each one of these stages has different problems. So one thing that I'm grateful for is to realize, okay, what would be most valuable today? And I'm assuming, based on what I understand and what I've asked, is that most people on this call are in this category in terms of their WildFit coaching business, is that you're somewhere in this stage. So we're going to zoom in on this really quick. And let's talk about this. So here we are. This is the same screen or same shot. It's just zoomed into that first stage. So number of employees, got sales monthly, so $0 to $4,000, or maybe we're in this stage right here. Then we have down here, the biggest hurdle is time. Interesting. I wonder why it's time. Well, we're going to talk about that today. One of the things that I learned when I went from a stage of life where I kind of did the 9-to-5 like employee thing and then going more into the entrepreneurial space, there was a lot to learn about time and how to use it well and not to just squander it away. And I remember when I made that transition about 12 years ago, I just thought I'd just pretty much do anything with my time. Well, that came with consequences, and I had some lessons to learn. So some of the things I'm going to share today with you are the things that I learned through hard struggle and a deep necessity to change. The other big hurdle here, if you're in this category where you're making between $4,000 and $10,000 a month as a Wild Fit coach, is that it's going to be leads. Now, I'm going to propose, if this is your primary challenge, and that's where you think, oh yeah, that's me, and I'm also that dollar amount per month. We're not covering that today, but let's go back. Let's take a step back and make sure we're totally fortified with time, that we got it just locked down there, because I've heard people at all stages of growth say, hey, time. It's like time is so valuable. Time is so valuable. And I think we can all relate to that in our own lives, where how many times have you heard somebody say, if I only had more time? That's probably one of the most common phrases around the topic of time. So let's talk about time. Have you ever felt like this, where you just want to call a time out? Come on, time, just stop. Like, I really need more time in my day. Or have you felt like this, where you're just like, you just want to stop time? I think these are kind of funny photos. I don't see anybody laughing though. Oh, we got a couple smiles. Okay, cool. So my question is, how important is it that you crack the code on time? I really am genuinely curious, and I want you to write it down if you want to put it in the chat, or if you just want to write it down in your own notes, to just ponder on this question for a moment. How important is it that you crack the code on time? What difference would this make? So I'm going to give you about 10 to 15 seconds. Awesome. Cool. So let's move on. So now that you've pondered on that, you've made special note of it. Keep that in mind. And this is kind of a platform for you as we continue to move forward, as we go to that next level. One of the realities about time is this: lost time is never found again. It's true, right? It's gone, it's gone. You can't get it back. This is one of those things about life. So we need leverage. So I have actually a unique experience around a hammer and a nail. I was about 8 years old, and my dad had torn down a fence at the place we used to live, and he wanted to repurpose all the fence boards, which were in okay condition, like it was passable. I don't remember what he wanted to use them for. And I learned a lot about how to pull nails out of fence boards. That was quite the experience for me as an 8-year-old boy. I don't remember how many nails I pulled. It was probably like 800, which is a lot when you're 8 years old. So we do need leverage, and I learned a lot about when you use a hammer. There's ways to use it that you get leverage. You kind of have to give it a crank, and then there's ways that just don't work and make you work extra hard. So we need leverage to fight back against this challenge that we have of time, and being able, just that ultimate challenge of being able to grow where we're at, to be able to find more time. So let's talk about 3 leverage points to get your time back. And I've got 5 bonus resources, mostly because there's only so much time for the 3, and I thought I'd go in really deep on them. And the 5 bonus resources you'll get right at the end of the call, as well, that you can go do a little extra exploration, and they are probably equally as impactful. So all said and done, we're going to cover 8 things, 3 of them in depth. So lever number one, let's go hunting. I know there's some people on the call that love dogs, and I thought this was a cool picture of a dog. So let's go hunting. Let's go hunting for time. So the first thing that I want you to mark down in particular as an action item is to do a time study or review. Now, you may have done this before, and if you have, great. If you happen to have done it recently, great. This is a really interesting thing, and I know Andrea actually brought this up recently in a slightly different context, but same idea of the importance of, we think we're like maxed out and we just can't get any more in. Well, one of the fundamentals, and Andrea learned this from a guy that's training a lot of high-level business owners in terms of growing to the next level, more like 4 and 5 stage in their growth cycle, is to literally say, hey, let's do a time study or review. So this is what that would look like. If you can do a week's worth of your study and do it in 15-minute increments, this might sound a little intense. And if you haven't done it before, it kind of is. I'll just be honest, it kind of is, but it's totally worth it because of the patterns we get to see. If you can give 1 week to this, it can literally give you so much back. Like, we're talking 1 week in a year of 52. This can be tremendous, tremendous leverage. So the hint is to look in Q3 and Q4. What is Kyle talking about? Well, we will go into that right now, because Q3 and Q4 is not like the business quarter. That's not what we're talking about. This actually comes back to something that I just think is a long-standing, just high-quality resource. And this comes from Stephen Covey. And he talks about this quadrant. There's 4 pieces to it. Obviously, it's a quadrant. There's up here, quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. So the first quadrant, and this, I just love this. One time at a live event about 6 years ago, the lead presenter, he's like, hey, Kyle, he was kind of like, sometimes you just make changes on the fly, and we were like going to lunch. He's like, how about when we come back, you start off the session? And I like had barely done any of that to that point in my life. And I'm like, okay, like I was like, I'm willing, it'll be good for me, it'll be a big stretch. And he's like, what are you going to cover? And this is like, if I was going to cover anything at that point in my life, it'd be this. I just think this is a great resource from Stephen Covey. So when I talk about Q3 and 4, we're talking down here, but let's do a quick review up here. Quadrant 1 are the things that are important and urgent. So these could be things that are crises, things where maybe there's a medical emergency, there's a deadline, a pressing problem, last minute preparation, for example, this morning. And to a point for some of us on the call, that'd be last minute prep. Oh, I got to make sure that this is running that. So that's Q1. Q2 is about the things that are important, but not urgent. This is usually the place that if we can get more here, like literally our lives will change and we'll have clarity of mind at a whole other level, which I know for me personally makes a tremendous difference in my ability to make decisions, my ability to help other people, and my ability to identify like I'll just like in a space of wanting to do my very best to relate with you. Like at the end of the day, we're all running our own business, or like we've got something we're trying to accomplish. And having that clarity of mind is just a huge difference maker to identify, okay, this is essential, this isn't. I can do anything, but I can't do everything. So being able to get to the second quadrant is huge. So this is about planning, clarifying values, like what really matters to me, what lights me up, what's my power zone for work, who do I really care about right now that I feel like really needs wild fit in their life, that if they had this would make all the difference. How could I reach their heart? How could I help them get these great tools and resources that WildFit has to offer? Relationship building. Oh my goodness. It's just like, could you imagine like the value of having conversations with people versus, we're always texting and social media and stuff. So then let's go down to Q3 and Q4. This is where we're going to focus. So Q3 is about the not important, yet they're urgent. So some things might be other people's expectations, interruptions. It says most emails, some calls, and then this one's kind of funny, urgency masquerading as importance, right? The loudest person, the one who screams the loudest gets the attention. Super, super powerful stuff. Then we got the fourth quadrant, which is those things that are not important, but are, and not urgent. So this one is all about things that are like escapist, mindless TV watching, busy work, junk mail. Now, just for the record, for me personally, I think there's space to watch a movie or watch TV. It's the mindless one. It's just like, we're just doing it unconsciously just because it's what we do, versus like being intentional. Like, hey, I'm going to rock it today in my work or this week. And my reward is that on, like for me last night, Stanley Cup Finals, Game 7, I'm going to set this time aside to really enjoy it. Not mindlessly, but like in a full like way of just like really enjoy it. It doesn't happen often though. I don't just mindlessly watch TV. Then we got busy work, junk mail, some emails, some calls. So that's a quick summary of the Covey quadrant. I'll just pause for a second. Does anybody have any questions about anything here, just to get clarity? I see people have thrown comments in. Great. Well, let's keep moving then. So let's check in. Maybe you don't need a study of your time. Like maybe you don't. Maybe you already know. Like if you just are like just really honest with yourself for a moment, maybe you're like, oh, I know exactly what that thing is that just isn't working for me if I really step back and look at things. So therefore, is the study worth it? I'll let you decide. You might already know. So that is the first thing I wanted to cover for us to go next level. So any kind of final thoughts or notes you want to write down on this topic, please do. And we're going to transition right shortly here into the next lever. I see, Lisa, you're holding up a paper. Is that like a secret message for me? It's like, you're doing great. I didn't know if there's like a question on there. The video bubble's really small. It's great. I wish I could actually see everybody's Zoom because I got to see my screen. And then anyways, I don't know if anybody has a code for that to crack for me next time. It'd be great. So let's go to the next thing. The second lever is getting clarity. So I talked a little bit about this a couple minutes ago. Just what's the value of getting clarity? To me, it makes all the difference. This was a picture I took about 3 years ago in the Canadian Rockies. There was a group of us that took a helicopter and we rode up into this area. This is an area called Klein River, Alberta. And this is a picture I took, one of my favorite pictures ever. I love taking pictures. So let's talk a little bit more about getting clarity. And I was pondering this, and this is truly an experience I had about 3 months ago. I was pondering on this topic of time. And how can I get even more of my time back? So you guys can probably tell I'm maybe a little crazy about this, but I promise I don't think about it all the time. I do really value time though. And I was genuinely thinking about this. A couple of reasons is I'm a father. My wife and I, we have a 2-year-old and she's just getting more and more active. So time is very precious. I also love the work we do with WildFit and everything that we do at the Legacy Creative Agency up here in Calgary. And I want to make sure I'm on top of my game. I want to make sure with the time that I have, I'm making a difference and making an impact. And then I had this flash of brilliance as I was pondering on this question. One of the things I've learned in life is if we can ask, and this is something Tony Robbins talks about, the quality of our life is directly correlated to the quality of our questions. So being able to ask quality questions is awesome. And I love how answers come. And sometimes they just kind of come to us or they come through other people or maybe a book we're reading. And I had this flash of brilliance. And it wasn't my brilliance, really. It was inspiration, I think, from the outside. And when this flash of brilliance happened, I remember I was so excited because I went and ran to my wife, Annalise, and I was like, I have this idea and I figured this thing out. And I call it this. I call it my Einstein moment. I had one Einstein moment in my life, and this is it. This is what it was. And it came to running some math, because that's what Einstein would do, right? So let's look at this math. So if I could find 1 hour a day, and I'm thinking, if we go back to the whole quadrant 3, quadrant 4 thing, if I could find 1 hour a day in my time study, or my strong suspicion of where there was an opportunity, I could find 5 hours a week. And I know that there's seven days in a week. I understand that. I'm just being conservative. It's not just a Canadian thing. We don't have a five-day week here. Just wanting to be super conservative, to not like make things bigger than they appear. If I could find that hour a week and cascade that over the course of a year, that would be 260 hours. Does that sound like a pretty decent number to you guys? Like 260 hours? That's a lot of hours. And I had, in this realization, I was like, oh my goodness, this whole idea, if I could only have more time, it's actually available to us. Like, it's legitimately right here. It's right before our nose. So if we break this back down to number of days, because that's a little more tangible to us at that high number, it's about 10.8 days per year. Let's say you only find 30 minutes. Okay, well, it's 5 days a year. What could you do with 5 days a year? This is super, super interesting to consider. What would you do if you had 10 extra days a year? Maybe it's 5. Maybe you find an hour and a half each day. Remember, we only did 5 days. So this is conservative. What if you had 10 extra days? How would you use them? I would love for you guys to write this down, because this is huge. Sometimes we don't know what it would be like, but we can only visualize it in our mind, and right now is that opportunity. So this is a chance to just write down anything that comes to your mind for this question. And I'll give you guys another 15 seconds or so. Okay. So I hope you got some things there that come to mind. And chances are, whatever that is aligns with what matters most to you right now in your life. And this is going to be kind of cool to consider. And we'll come to that in a moment. Before we do that, I want to talk about how we could sustain this success. And we're going to build upon this as well. So this whole idea of 10 extra days and 1 hour and all that might sound great. And maybe everybody will come out of this call and be like, oh my goodness, I am so locked in on this. It's going to be awesome. And I don't know how many of you've ever been to like an event, or maybe you had coaching, and you're like, come out of it and you're just raring and blaring and you're in momentum, right? You're just rocking it. And then after some point in time, it kind of dips. Well, that's simply just because that coach or that experience helped us create a habit. And then the trick is to be able to sustain that. So let's talk about how we can do that. So sustaining your success in this. So I'm going to propose a 7-day media fast. Now, some people might be sweating bullets already. Maybe not. Maybe you've done this. Maybe you're already good. And this is not just social media, but this is media, okay? So some people might be having heart palpitations, no heart attacks, okay, guys? We'll talk about this and how this can be beneficial. So if you're willing to take this on, I invite you to journal what you notice. And the reason that I propose that is I've done this about 3 or 4 times in the last year. And one other thing I'll say before I get into that is that if we're going to fight back against this time thing, you remember that those 2 hockey players at the start of the presentation? There's like literally, we have to push back against a lot of things that are going on around us. And this is a way to do it. It's a super powerful thing. And I'm pretty sure in the Wild Fit, and Angie or Nicole or Andrew can confirm or deny that doing a fast is probably somewhere a part of the program and the ideology. So this is taking that same concept and applying it to media so we get our time back. And what I've noticed in doing this, I've done about 3 or 4 of these in the last year, is that I'm able to push back and then I go, oh, wow, there was this 80% of my use of media totally not creating value for me, not essential, not meaningful. This other 20%, super good. So I'm not talking about doing an eternal media fast. I'm just talking about 7 days to get clarity to be able to break the 2 apart and to be able to identify, I really think it's an 80-20 thing, the 80% that isn't really meaningful versus the 20% that really does work for us. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. And then to take this to the next level is to, I had this realization about 6 months ago. I'm like, this is so awesome every time I do this 7-day media fast. I'm like, I need to put this in my calendar as a reoccurring event, schedule it every 90 days because it is literally that useful that I just don't want to miss out on this opportunity. It's been so great. And I am certain that in the last year, I've been able to get time back, mind space back at a whole different level because of doing this media fast. So this includes, for me, my big one is sports. It's actually not social media. I think we've all got our things. For some people, it's movies. It could be a variety of things. There's all kinds of social media platforms. For me, my big one is sports. And I go on those 7-day media fasts. It's literally no sports. And I am amazed at how much time I have in a day. It's incredible. Those things that are quadrant 2 that are like really meaningful, the important but not urgent, I'm now able to, I can go there, and it's been so valuable. So this has been, I hope, inspiring and also maybe a little bit challenging, but I think things that create change often have an element of challenge to them. I want to know what matters more to you, those time waster things, or freeing up 10 days a year. And that's really the choice that we all have. And it's 100% like you can choose. It's totally cool. And I'm not even suggesting you're going to be a master at this. And I'm not suggesting I am either. I'm just suggesting just make the decision now and the decision will guide you. It'll literally carve your future. So, and I want to make that promise because there's just something powerful about making a decision, sticking with it. And like, there's this great saying, I think the guy's last name was Goth, who said that when we make a decision, I'm paraphrasing, when we make a true commitment, that providence moves too. So it basically means like everything rearranges around us to align with that decision. And this is one of those opportunities. So I invite you to be a game changer because there's a lot of people out there that they need our leadership in this area. And I really think that if you felt like, hey, this is something I should take on, hopefully you haven't shoulded yourself, but if you feel like you should take it on or you want to take it on, or it's just like so vital to take it on, you will be a game changer for other people. And that's I think for a lot of people that do the kind of things that we do, probably a big motivator is contribution. So this is an awesome way to contribute. And it really starts with when we can lead ourselves, we can then help lead others. And this is also just fundamental stuff. Being a coach, like literally we have to lead from the inside out and we can make an impact. And I know you guys are already doing that or else you wouldn't be in the position you are as being Wildfit coaches. So we have just went through the second lever. And then we just got this next level slide again because we just went next level. If you think back to when we started this call, we've done a few next levels and you've got some great notes. And Angie's next level with their hands up. Right, Angie? So let's go on to the third and final lever, and then we'll hit those 5 bonuses at the end. Okay? So this third and final lever is something that came to me about 12, 13 years ago. There seems to be something about that time frame, but that was really when I was like, I need to figure out some things around time, because that's when I transitioned from like employee 9 to 5 to more entrepreneurial endeavors. And this is a quote from a guy that some of you may know. His name is John Maxwell, and he's just like this really crisp, like leadership speaker, and he's just got great content. If you've like heard, if you already know John Maxwell, you read some of his stuff, or maybe seen him live, you just like put it in the chat and say, just put John, John M or something. I know Andrew, I think you saw him back in December, right? That's great. So John Maxwell, and there's this YouTube video, and I think this would have been early in YouTube's days, and the quality of the video was really low. The resolution was just like really bad. But I remember what he said as clear as day. He said that one of the ways to have great victory and leverage in life is to learn this one principle. And he said, if you can learn this one principle and apply it, it'll literally change everything and our relationship with time. And this is what he said. He said, tomorrow starts today. And I was like, that's interesting. How is that possible? Like, tomorrow isn't today, but it starts today? Like, that's kind of wild. Well, this is what he meant by tomorrow starts today. First off, he said, basically, we need to know the rules. And I'm going to weave in a couple lessons from some other really smart people that talk about like how to get leverage. So we're going to transition from some John Maxwell and weave in some stuff from a guy named Richard Koch and the 80-20 principle. So we need to know the rules. There's some things that matter and some things that don't have as much of an impact. And if we can figure this out, we can crack the code, which is what John Maxwell is getting at. Because the reality is that 20% of our efforts produce 80% of our results. Have you ever heard of the 80-20 principle before? Is one of the I think most people have, and I kind of did a little bit up until about a year or two ago, and then I was like, I started to finally realize how powerful it was, and I hear 80-20s everywhere. Like, it is crazy. I hear it like in sports when there's like somebody talking about something that happened. I hear it in work we do. I hear it in, the number of people that are engaged in a certain thing versus those that aren't. It's all 80-20s everywhere. So this is another just visual aspect of 80-20. And we're going to get back to this tomorrow starts today thing because it is a true 80-20. So what is tomorrow starts today? Tomorrow starts today is this. It ties to how your daily routine matters. And I'm going to give just a few bullet points right now of a little bit more detail about what this means because we're still pretty big picture. So if you got your pen and paper, you're ready for some note taking. So tomorrow starts today is this idea that 80-20. Let me pose this question. For most of you, if you could get a good night's sleep and you were on top of things and you're just like in your calm flow zone, if that's, if you can go there, do you have your best quality? When do you have your freshest energy? Is your freshest energy in the morning, maybe a little bit of time after you've woken up, then through your morning routine? Is it in the afternoon? Is it in the evening? Provided that it is in the morning, which would make most sense because usually if we sleep, we're rested, we've got, more capacity, then the morning is a valuable time. So one of the things I learned from this idea about tomorrow starts today is there are things that I used to do in the morning that I don't do in the morning anymore because it's not the time to be doing them. Like to be doing little fidgety things like packing a lunch or preparing the 80% of breakfast that I could have done the night before, whatever, doing emails to start the day. Oh, I'm just going to check a bunch of emails. That's not tomorrow starts today. Those kinds of things, in my mind, need to happen at the end of the last day because they're not that valuable. They're those things on that Covey quadrant that just, they're not the things that make the big difference. So here's some really raw examples about what my wife and I do. So we have smoothie every morning. A good portion of it, aside from anything frozen, we pull from the freezer. We don't pull that out the night before. But we literally take like the almonds, put them in the blender. The night before, it's sitting on the counter. We got our smoothie jars already laid out. It's all there. This might sound hyper vigilant, but I really want to make sure that I am doing the things in the morning that matter most. I want to get leverage on time. So those are some things I do. I also intentionally, anything else I can clear the slate on so the morning I can start fresh and clear is totally what I do. I do yoga. I don't know how many of you do your exercise when you wake up in the morning. One thing I learned from somebody that had trained with Tony Robbins, he was like, I get that some people work out after work, but they're like, why would I wait until I'm done my day to set my state and to get that state bump? That's really like a start of day thing. Get my state up, boom, and then I can approach the day with a peak state. So for me, I do yoga in the morning. I literally roll my yoga mat out the night before. It takes me 20 seconds, but it just means in the morning I'm right in flow. I don't need to think. And if you've done any reading about any Olympic athletes like Josh Phelps, there's a book called Essentialism, which I'll reference at the end. It tells a whole story about this guy named Josh Phelps who won a bunch of gold medals for America. True, Nicole? Do you remember Josh Phelps? He won it's like a decade ago, I think now, but he literally won like 5 gold medals in 1 year in swimming. Like that's insane. And he had a whole routine where it's just like, it was just smooth. He didn't have to figure this out and do this. He would, get dressed a certain way, warm up a certain way, do a lap a certain way. He would listen to whatever he had in his ears. He had this whole routine he did every morning, and it just put him in a flow state. There's some great books out there about that as well. It's like, how can you get in your own version of a flow state? So we're talking about getting time back, but in a sense, the next level beyond just getting time back is getting into an emotional and spiritual flow state where we're just riding an other wave. And this is one of the biggest hacks I've ever discovered, I think, just through floundering and then some just heavy desire to want to figure it out, is that there's this spiritual flow state. Little other tip here that I learned, a little bonus nugget. There was somebody that was in his 90s, and he was still very active in everything in life, family, and he was part of an organization and would just a really busy life, literally flying across the world back and forth. And he said that his key to having a long, prosperous life was his bedtime and wake time. And he would go to bed no later than 10 p.m. and he was up by 6 a.m. And there's something about that 6 a.m. or earlier wake time. There's a flow state there for me. There's 100%. And I also remember a season where I could barely get my butt out of bed before 7:30 or 8. So I'm not proposing if you haven't already experienced the 6 a.m. flow state thing I'm talking about, that's okay. However, I really have found there's something there, something powerful there. So your daily routine matters. So we've covered, I think, this in great depth about how tomorrow starts today. So I'd love to know, how can you apply this idea of tomorrow starts today? And if anybody would like to share, I'd love to hear if anybody wants to put in the chat, or I don't know if typically on this call we open and let people speak, or I don't know if that's common, but if anybody wants to share, that'd be great. Maybe 1 or 2 people, just for sake of time. And Nicole, if you can help facilitate that, because that would be great. So does anybody want to share, how can you apply this idea of tomorrow starts today? Just 1 or 2 people.
Kyle, I can just share a couple that I do. I always make my Alka-Geyser the night before. Not always, but frequently I make my Alka-Geyser the night before. And then I just leave it in the fridge. I also, if I'm working out the next day, all my workout clothes are all laid out before I go to bed, because then I don't have to think about it when I get up in the morning. I do lunch for the kids the night before. And you may have said this, but I also review my calendar for the next day, so I know what's prep, like what I need to do the next day, and where I might have squeeze points of time or where my kids have to be out at certain places. So I do all of that the night before.
That's great. That's a good one to highlight. Yeah. Yeah, the value of like looking at our calendar and being clear on what we're getting into the next day. Good call. Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to share? Do we have any takers, Nicole?
I have unmuted Rocky.
Yeah, hi, Rakhi.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, then fantastic. When you say tomorrow starts today, this is what I learned in Wildfit when I started the program. Because as we go from one week to another, and this is how we plan our food, right? And we have to like be prepared with what is in our fridge stored. And we have to tune our mind also and see and what are the emotional levels we are working on. So first thing is always I see to it that my alkalizer is always ready there with the bottle. And so whenever I'm rushing out, going out, I just pop in just few alkalizer and just go away. So the kind of food you eat and the way you train yourself to have the right food, everything falls in place. So be it the Wildfit certification course, which I've decided that I have to put this 2 hours or 3 hours every day to listen to edX videos and how I have to plan. And of course, this is motivating me to freeze my practical date also. So this is how the deep planning goes in each and every step from food to the way we live.
That's great. Thank you for that answer. I love that. Thanks for sharing those thoughts. I love that.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, let's keep moving. So we, I don't keep you guys here too long. Let's talk about, so we just went through the last lever, which is next level, tomorrow starts today. So we went to the next level with that. And we're just going to recap what we've covered, these 3 leverage points. By the way, this is a great thing as a coach. And also if you're in sales conversations, one of the things that I had learned is that when you talk with people, either to groups or even in a conversation, a lot of times what I'd learned is in a sales conversation or coaching is you go through a bunch of stuff. Like for example, if you're as a Wildfit coach, you might cover a few things with people and have a really good conversation and build a relationship. And at the end, if you can do something like, hey, what's your biggest takeaway, which is what we'll do in this call. And if you can also do a summary, say, hey, I'd love to know what's your biggest takeaway. We've covered these 3 things in our conversation today. And so I'd love to know what's your biggest takeaway. It's a really cool way to round up a conversation and give people a takeaway. And they got that clarity that they need to be able to take a next step. So I wanted to drop that in there as a little like kind of sales coaching thing that I love. So we've covered about this idea about going hunting and doing a time study. We talked about the value of clarity and what the impact can be of finding an hour a day and how that can add up. And we've also talked about how tomorrow starts today. And it sounds like a lot of people in this call are already pretty tuned in on that, so that's great. So I'd love to know what are your 2 to 3 biggest takeaways, and if it's like your biggest takeaway, what are your 2 to 3 biggest takeaways? If anybody would like to share what your 2 to 3 biggest takeaways are, I would love to hear. And even if you want to put it in the chat, that'd be great. And I will share as well, just in closing, that there was a question back a little while ago from Jules, I believe. I'm just digging back. And you'd asked Jules about this idea of can I elaborate on 1 week in 15-minute increments? So all I was asking there was just like to time study it, to say for a week, break it down into 15-minute increments. So that could look like in a spreadsheet, you just say, from 8 to 8:15 and 8:15 to 8:30. And you just go through your whole day like that, and you could maybe print it out, or you could just put it in your notes, like in a book. So that's what I meant by that, is just tracking your time in 15-minute increments.
And Kyle, specifically on that, like even tracking, making dinner, eating dinner, responding to emails, you know, on the phone with Eric, whatever it is that you're doing in those 15 minutes, just write down what you're doing. It's amazing how you find these little pockets of 10 or 15 minutes where it's like, wow, I could have done that faster, or, you know, that's not really a valuable use of the time that I had, and how quickly you can get those little pockets back.
That's great. Yeah, thank you, Andrea. I love that. So, and I'm also we're going to have some question and answer time here just at the end. So if there's any, I'll circle back to the chat and make sure I didn't miss anything. So your 2 to 3 biggest takeaways, what are you going to implement? I think you've probably already have clarity on that. And you may have already let us know in the chat as well. So thank you for that. So let's do this. Let's go to any questions you have about what we've covered. I'm going to circle through the chat. If you have any that, Nicole, if there's anybody you want to bring on with the question, you can. I'm also going to scan through the chat and make sure we got everything covered.
Kyle, I have a couple of just comments I want to read out as I read people's
Cool.
feedback. And one that I really like was Teresa said she's going to change. I think what she means is change my social media from the first thing in the morning to read something new. So instead of checking social media, reading something new first thing in the morning, which is such a great way to start. And being clear on how, Numi said, being clear on how you'll use your extra time. That is such a great thing. By the way, that one applies with money too. Like sometimes people have a block around how much money they'll allow into their life because they don't really know how they would use it. So if you can find ways you would use it, then somehow we find a way to, you know, create more of it. So that's very true. Being clear on what do you want to do with your extra time really matters. I know about just before I started doing WildFit is when I made exercise a priority, right? And so that's one thing you could add in terms of what you'd like to do with your extra time, or for that matter, just relax, like take a long bath and think and read and walk and do things that are peaceful.
Totally.
And Lisa mentioned a time review. It's one of the best things ever to do a time study and see what happens. And then Dean asked, should we do a review at the end of the day or in the day when we're freshest? Do you mean the review after you do the time study, or do you mean when to note the time study? I'm not sure exactly what the question means.
Actually, when do we note the time reviews? Because we say we will do the time review in 15 minutes incremental for the whole week, right?
Yeah.
So when is the best time to sit down to really do the review of what we have done? Should we do it at the end of the day or?
I would do it at the end of the week and look at the whole week and the patterns of, you know, what did you do the same every day? What did you do different every day? Where were there pockets where you weren't so efficient, or where you could have maybe combined activities? Like, for example, I only run errands once per week and I try to put them all together so that I'm not running a bunch of little 5-minute errands. Instead, I'm just taking an hour and I'm doing it all at once. So at the end of the week, review your time study and see where there either are things that you're spending time on that you don't want to be, and that's just easy to cut right out, or like Kyle said in the quadrants, where do they fall into? So I just do it at the end of the week. I actually sometimes track for 2 weeks and then do it at the end of 2 weeks.
Andrea, what do you track on?
I track on, so I do it a couple ways. I usually track on a time tracking tool that we use for work. And so I do it during work hours. If it's personal, I track it on paper. I have oops, I don't know if I can't see. Yeah, I have like a day timer that I use, an old school one on paper. The other thing you could do is just do it in a notebook.
Good old-fashioned notebook.
Good old-fashioned notebook. I know pen and paper. I have tried all sorts of electronic things, and pen and paper still works a lot for me. I went back to that like 3 years ago after testing a bunch of, these fancy electronic things. Just give me a pen and paper. I remember things that way.
Great. Thanks, Andrea. I want to just comb through as well. And if you spot anything else that we maybe missed or want to speak to, please jump in. I think, Petra, you'd asked a question. You said, what does media cover in the fast? I think, hopefully I did expand upon that after. Just a quick recap. So that basically includes anything that comes through a screen. I would consider that all to be media. Maybe with the exception of email, right? Because we need email to work or whatever, but social media, apps, platforms, videos, movies, YouTube, sports, you could probably make a long list, but hopefully that helps. And then Lisa, you'd asked, how can we take time off when we absolutely need leads? That's a great question. And if you want to expand on the chat, if my response doesn't help answer this, it sounds like maybe you're in the second piece where as we covered earlier, there's the kind of two areas. And let's just see if I get back there kind of quick. I have to go ways back. But basically there's our biggest challenge is time. And then the next one is leads. And I was suggesting that let's make sure that we really do have the time thing nailed down. And if we do, and if we can find more time there, then why don't we allocate that time towards marketing and figure out the marketing side? And it's probably digging back into some of the content maybe it's already been covered on some of these mastermind calls or other resources out there. In fact, if you have any maybe more specifics you want around that, maybe you could post it. I think there's the Facebook group, and maybe Nicole, if Lisa posts something there with questions about that, maybe we can try to get her some extra resources. And maybe just let me know when that comes in and maybe I can help. And thank you, Petra. Okay, yes, you did jump in with what it was, Facebook, YouTube, the different types of media. Just scanning through. Thank you, Gina, for what you said. Time is something we create. We create time for the things that are important to us. And then Melanie, you'd said, when we make a true commitment, everything around us aligns that decision. Absolutely. And it sounds like these were some big takeaways for some people on the call, one of which is be clear on how I will use the extra time. I just love the general focus on improving time management and stating how crucial it is. And then one of the other things that was shared is I will definitely implement the 7 days of no media fast every 60 days. If you want to do it every 60 days, great. I've been doing it at 90 because it just kind of works out, but 60 days, why not go to the next level with that? Thanks, Gina, for joining us. It sounded like you had to jump out a bit early. And great to meet you as well, Melinda.
Lisa has her hand raised.
We'll love your input, Andrea. Yeah, so that's that. We'll just go wrapping up. I had a couple last extra resources from some super smart people. So these are the 5 bonuses that you can take note of. And these are just, if you're somebody that wants even more information on this topic or even more things that help strengthen your understanding, then these are some just awesome resources. And these go beyond just time. I really think these really kind of go across the gamut of life and business, and they're just great. So one of these great resources is a book called The 80-20 Principle by a guy named Richard Koch. He's European. He's not as well known in North America, but he's tremendously successful. I think his net worth right now is, it's like, at least a few years ago, is $373 million. That's not how much he makes in his business as a sales number. That's his net worth, which is a whole different number and quite incredible. And he's got some great stuff on this 80-20 principle and time and where we put our priority with people. And he basically emphasized, hey, like, let's do the things that bring us joy and let's go that direction. Great book. One of my favorite books, and Andrea knows this, this book's called Essentialism by a guy named Greg McEwen. And he's got some just beautiful things he says in that book. One of which I quoted earlier is that we can do anything, but we can't do everything.
Kyle, can I just put it in for this book? If there's one book I can recommend you read, that's it. It's one I listen to once every 6 months because I seem to forget what's in it. And I get every single time I get something out of it. And it's gotta be like my number one book. That and A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl are the two that I would say but if I had to pick one, I'd probably still even go with Essentialism, even though that's a bit I don't like picking between the two.
You don't like to pick favorites, but this is one of those times.
Yeah, if I had to pick a favorite, that'd be it.
That's great. I just found out a couple weeks ago, there's somebody I know here in Calgary who like has been to Greg McEwen's house, and I was like, oh, like, because I just really am a big fan. So yeah, it's cool. Great, amazing book. Here's one last resource. It's not in the book category. But it's still another great resource, and this was life-changing for me to help me get even more clarity on my flow state. Because my flow state and how I get there and what that looks like for me would be a little different than Nicole. And I know that because of this next tool. And that my flow state would be a little different than Angie. And I know that because of this next tool. And I know that Angie's also aware of this tool, and she'll know that when it brings it up. And same for Andrea. We all kind of get to our own flow state and can find leverage in our own way based on this. And this is something called the Kolbe A Index by a lady named Kathy Kolbe, who for the early portion of her life was labeled as dyslexic, and she was, all kinds of labels that weren't healthy or kind were given to her in school. And she had a father who had done a lot of like study in the area of like cognition, like, tests that measure how smart you are and IQ and all that. And he started to realize there's this whole other part of the brain that had never been explored, called the cognitive side of our brain, which is just how we naturally strive. If there's a goal or a challenge, how we do what we do in just a natural way, just genuinely without outside pressure, how we would do it in our unique power zones. And she's unearthed this, and she's got research on it. Like, it's very legitimate. And it's impacted a lot of people's lives. And I wanted to share this because she's a smart person, and it's an amazing life-changing resource for me. So the Kolbe A Index, you can look that up on Google, and you should find it quite shortly. And then just a couple extra tools and hacks. I know, Andrea, you're like, when we chatted about a week ago, you're like, you got to tell them about this one. And I was like, oh, right. Like, yeah, I do, because it's a good one. It's not as maybe conceptual and high level as some of the things we covered. It's quite tactical, but a game changer nonetheless. And it's called loom.com, and it's a little video thing where you can record your screen, and it's super simple to use. Like, technology from 5-10 years ago when it came to that stuff was clunky and difficult, and unless you were technology strong, it would just cause you to get gray hairs, which is why I've got them. But loom.com came around a couple years ago, and amazing platform. Totally check it out. In fact, one of the bonus things that'll come your way post call, I'd recorded on Loom, and it was so simple. So take note of that. Quick thing. If you're like looking to get more leads, part of the way to do that is to have conversations with people. People are pretty busy. However, people do open videos. And so if you're like in a conversation with somebody, or maybe you're trying to land a corporate opportunity, just something Andrea talked about on one of the last ones, this is a cool way. You could do a little 2-minute like sales pitch on WildFit and how it's a game changer, and maybe give some value and reference the blog with a recipe or whatever that looks like, whatever tools and things you could give that would be valuable to people. Loom.com, amazing.
And Kyle, yes, it's free. Somebody asked that.
Oh yeah, it's free.
Loom.com. Yeah, it has sped up how we communicate massively.
It's great. Yeah, total game changer. And then the other one, this will come to you guys after the call, and I did this on Loom, and these are Google Quick Keys. I did a few weeks ago, the team here in Calgary, we got together and did a little efficiency thing, and I actually did this right at the start of my presentation, this Quick Keys thing, because I thought what you're supposed to do when you speak to people is you want to try to end on a high, so you want to like give your like best thing, at the end. And I did it at the start because I just thought it's just Quick Keys. But you should have seen the looks on people's faces there as we went through them. They're like, oh my gosh, like they're like smiling and like, oh, like they're just so excited. So I didn't want to leave this out. You'll get it in a Loom, 3 different Loom videos following, go over these Quick Keys. And basically it's a way you can use Google Faster, Gmail, Google Calendar, Google Drive, even Google Search, frankly. Super cool. So that's the last resource. So hopefully those are helpful for you. We'll get those Google Quick Keys to you. I want to thank you for your time today. It's been super fun, and I just have 2 parting comments. I want to say good luck, and I also want you to know that you've got this thing. And I want to thank you for your participation. And I want to just reemphasize that I really feel so strongly as I thought about you guys that the work you do as a WildFit coach is important work. I imagine you're only doing this because it aligns with you on a core level. And it's, as Greg McEwen says in the book Essentialism, that it's like your highest point of contribution. It's a way that you can contribute to other people's lives. And I don't think there's a better way to live life than to live in a place of contribution. I'm super grateful for this time together today. It's been awesome. I so wish like we were in a physical location and we'd have even more interaction. But I guess for today, we'll call this good enough. And I just want to promise you as well, as closing on the things we've covered today, I want to just promise you that as you apply what you've learned today, you'll go next level. And I just really believe it, because these things are just so awesome. Like these are literally, some of these things are like a decade in the works for me, and they just keep giving back to me. So I just want to leave you guys with that promise, and yeah, just say thank you for your time. That's all I got, Andrea.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you for your time and your wisdom, and I hope everybody got some value out of it. It looks like they did. I know that every time, literally almost every meeting, I'll watch Kyle do something and I'll see that he's more efficient than I know how to be. And I'm pretty efficient, so okay. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Can I just
good stuff. Thank you, everybody. Oh, go ahead, Nicole.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to point out the fact that we are ending early because of his efficientness.
That's good.
It works out perfectly.
I know, always thought of. One of my favorite things, and guys, this is something that I think can be taken into every area of life, but one of my favorite things about working with Kyle is he always shows up to a meeting prepared. There's notes, I have something to look at in advance. He kind of lays out what the options are for me so I can make an efficient, quick decision. And I know I do the same for Eric and the people that I work with, but it certainly makes everybody's time more efficient when you take a little bit of time to think about it before you present something. So thank you very much, Kyle. I really appreciate it. If there are any other burning questions, I have a few minutes. Otherwise, we can wrap this up early and we can stop the recording now, Nicole. But thank you guys very much for coming.